On the gritty, rain-slicked streets of Glasgow, a war has been raging for decades. It's not a war fought between nations with flags and armies, but a bitter, brutal conflict between families. They are fighting for absolute control of a multi-million-pound criminal empire built on a foundation of drugs, savage violence, and paralyzing fear. This is a dark saga of deep-rooted rivalries that span generations, of shockingly brutal hits carried out in broad daylight, and an unbreakable code of silence that has left a devastating trail of bodies and broken lives. At the very heart of this modern gangland epic is one man, Stephen Bonzo Daniel. He's a man who, according to both police and underworld sources, ascended toward the top of a powerful crime dynasty, only to become the target of one of the most savage and personal attacks in the city's violent history. It was an act of medieval butchery, so extreme it would permanently destroy his face and make him a living, breathing symbol of the very war he was accused of helping to wage. Picture the scene: a high-speed chase tearing through the city's north side under the cloak of midnight. Speeds hit a terrifying 100 miles per hour on public roads, ending only when a car is violently rammed and trapped on a motorway on-ramp. The driver, a key figure in the city's criminal underworld, is dragged from his wrecked vehicle. What followed was not just a beating, but a savage and merciless attack with a cleaver, a machete, and a hammer. Violence so extreme, so personal, it was clearly intended to leave him disfigured for life. The man was Stephen Bonzo Daniel, nephew of a notorious crime lord. But this moment of unimaginable brutality wasn't the beginning of the story. It was the bloody climax of a war that had been boiling for years. To understand the face that was destroyed that night and the relentless hatred that fueled the attack, we need to go back to the very beginning, the rise of a crime dynasty. To truly understand Stephen Bonzo Daniel, you first have to understand the family that forged him. The Daniel crime family didn't just appear overnight. Their roots run deep in the tough, deprived streets of Glasgow's Postle Park and Milton districts. For decades, the clan was ruthlessly and shrewdly commanded by its patriarch, Jamie Daniel. He was a calculating and feared figure who, from humble beginnings in scrap metal and used cars, meticulously built what law enforcement estimated to be a 10 million pound criminal empire. Those legitimate businesses were merely a front, a stepping stone to cornering the market on what would become the family's true source of immense power: the trafficking of heroin and cocaine. The Daniels evolved into one of Scotland's most powerful and feared organized crime groups. Their name was whispered in hushed tones in pubs and on street corners, a name that became synonymous with both unimaginable wealth and terrifying, unrestrained violence. Within this world, Stephen, known universally as Bonzo, wasn't just another street soldier. He was practically royalty. His mother, Annette Daniel, was Jamie's sister, placing him in the absolute inner core of the clan's hierarchy. He was born into this life, steeped in a world where loyalty was the only currency that mattered, and where betrayal was an unforgivable sin that often carried a death sentence. In July 2016, the entire landscape of Glasgow's underworld shifted dramatically. Jamie Daniel died after a long battle with cancer, leaving a massive and dangerous power vacuum at the very top of his criminal enterprise. It was into this void that Stephen Bonzo Daniel stepped. He wasn't his uncle, but according to a chorus of underworld chatter, he was widely seen as the heir apparent. Sources suggest Bonzo took on a leading role, allegedly assuming control of the family's vast and complex drug network and its associated businesses. He was no longer just an enforcer. He was now viewed as a strategic leader, tasked with maintaining the intricate drug distribution networks that snake from Glasgow to Edinburgh and beyond. In this new role, he forged an intricate web of alliances, most notably with the powerful Edinburgh-based drugs baron Mark Richardson, a key Daniel ally in the East. This rapid ascension made him the de facto face of the Daniel dynasty. But with great power in this world comes the greatest risk. By taking the throne, Bonzo had effectively painted a giant target on his back, making himself the highest value objective for his family's most hated and sworn enemies. What do you think it would be like to be born into a crime dynasty like the Daniels? Is that kind of loyalty a shield, or is it a cage? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments. The Glasgow Gang War. The brutal war between the Daniel and Lyons crime families is a story written in blood, a conflict stretching back over 2 violent decades. Many reports and underworld sources trace the origin of the feud to a single, pivotal incident in 2001. A significant stash of cocaine belonging to the Daniels was allegedly stolen and then sold by figures linked to the rival Lyons clan. This wasn't just a financial loss. In the world they inhabited, it was a profound act of disrespect. It was a brazen act of defiance that is said to have ignited a vicious, tit-for-tat war for absolute control of Glasgow's lucrative and violent drug trade. What followed was a terrifying and sustained escalation of violence that turned parts of the city into a virtual battlefield. The subsequent years were marked by a horrifying catalog of drive-by shootings, firebombings, kidnappings, and a series of high-profile murders that repeatedly shocked the nation. In 2006, a key flashpoint occurred when Lyons family member Michael Lyons was shot and killed at a Glasgow garage. The attack was publicly linked to one of the Daniel family's most feared lieutenants, a man named Kevin "Gerbil" Carroll. Carroll himself was a man who lived and breathed violence. But in 2010, the sword he lived by would become the instrument of his own demise. In one of the most brazen gangland hits in Scottish history, Gerbil was executed in broad daylight as he sat trapped in his Audi in a crowded Asda supermarket car park. The assassination sent shockwaves through the underworld, demonstrating the terrifying new lengths the Lyons crew was willing to go to. The public nature of the hit, amidst shoppers and families, was a chilling statement, in a shocking twist that exposed the corruption within the system. It was later revealed that a police constable had been jailed for leaking critical intelligence about Carroll's movements, a betrayal that allegedly sealed his fate. Throughout the 2010s, the violence spiraled completely out of control. Both sides carried out numerous assassination attempts and retaliatory hits. The conflict became so bloody and so public that a high court judge would later condemn the gangs for having tried to turn the streets of Glasgow into a war zone. It was against this backdrop of relentless, ever-escalating violence that Stephen Bonzo Daniel's profile continued to rise. The war was no longer just about business. It had become deeply personal, and a concentrated campaign of sheer terror was about to be unleashed directly on him and his entire family. This kind of open warfare is absolutely terrifying. Have you ever heard of a feud this intense in your own city or country? Share your stories below, and don't forget to hit that like button if you're finding this deep dive compelling. The assassination attempt. The attack on Bonzo Daniel on the night of May 18th, 2017, was the brutal and bloody climax of what prosecutors would later describe as a 5-month reign of terror orchestrated by the Lyons clan. In that short, violent period, a Lyons-backed hit squad launched a terrifying series of attempted murders targeting key Daniel family members and their closest associates. The campaign was relentless. Shortly before the attack on Bonzo, his relative Robert Daniel was ambushed and shot, a clear and chilling signal that the war was now laser-focused on Bonzo's immediate family. The Lyons crew operated with cold, calculated, and modern precision. They used encrypted phones to communicate, a fleet of stolen cars to avoid detection, and, most chillingly, sophisticated tracking devices to monitor their targets' every move, allowing them to wait patiently for the perfect moment to strike. In a stunning betrayal that highlights the treachery of the underworld, a longtime Daniel associate and former footballer, Alistair McMillan, turned star witness. He told police he'd been offered a staggering £50,000 by the Lyons crew to help them track Bonzo. While he claimed he deliberately fed them bad information, the truth was that the assassins were closing in regardless. On that fateful evening, Bonzo had been at Ibrox Stadium watching a Rangers game. As he drove home, a dreadful realization dawned on him. He was being tailed by an Audi S3 and a Volkswagen Golf. A terrifying high-speed chase erupted, careening through Glasgow at speeds approaching 100 miles per hour. Near the M8 motorway at Port Dundas, Bonzo's car was violently rammed, causing it to crash and leaving him injured and trapped inside. What happened next? is considered one of the most brutal gang attacks in modern Scottish history. Masked attackers swarmed his vehicle, armed with cleavers, machetes, and a claw hammer. They hacked at him relentlessly, focusing their animalistic savagery on his head and face. The onslaught was so vicious and caused such catastrophic injuries that when police first arrived on the scene, they mistakenly thought he'd been shot at close range with a shotgun. It was a clear and unambiguous attempt not just to murder him, but to permanently disfigure him, to erase his identity. He suffered devastating facial trauma that nearly severed his nose and was left for dead, his face destroyed, a gruesome, living trophy in a war with no rules. The betrayal by a trusted associate, the high-tech trackers, it's like a Hollywood movie script. What part of this chilling assassination plot shocks you the most? Comment below with your thoughts. The aftermath and investigation. Against all conceivable odds, Stephen Bonzo Daniel survived. He was rushed to a nearby hospital in critical condition, where surgeons worked for hours upon hours to save his life and, quite literally, rebuild his face from the mangled flesh and bone. The attack left him scarred for life, his appearance permanently and grotesquely altered, a walking testament to the sheer ferocity of the Glasgow underworld. The shocking brutality of the attack triggered a massive and intricate police Scotland investigation, which culminated in a 14-week high court trial that cost the public an estimated £6 million. The police work was methodical and relentless. The assassins tried to cover their tracks by setting their getaway cars on fire. But in their haste, they made a crucial mistake. They left a bloodied machete on a back seat of one of the burned-out vehicles. Using a vast network of CCTV from the chase, and crucially, the electronic footprint left by the trackers they had used to stalk their victims, detectives painstakingly pieced together the conspiracy. 6 members of a Lyons-linked gang were ultimately prosecuted for the series of attempted murders against the Daniel clan. In a moment of pure courtroom drama, Stephen Daniel himself took the stand. But in a move that perfectly underscored the underworld's powerful code of silence, he claimed he was completely unaware of any feud with the Lyons family. The presiding judge, Lord Mulholland, was scathing and dismissed his testimony entirely, stating bluntly, "I did not believe a word, and more importantly, neither did the jury." Ultimately, a form of justice was served. The 6 members of the Revenge Squad were found guilty and sentenced to a collective total of over 100 years in prison. Lord Mulholland praised the good, old-fashioned detective work that managed to foil the gang's sophisticated plot, declaring that they had tried to turn Glasgow into a war zone and that such lawlessness would never be tolerated. While the legal system had won a major and significant victory, the bloody war on the streets was far from over. Over 100 years in prison for the attackers, but the man they nearly killed refused to speak against them in court. Why do you think the code of silence is so powerful in the underworld? Is it fear? Is it loyalty? Or is it something else entirely? Drop a comment and let's discuss it. On Evolving Va. In the years following the attempt on his life, Stephen Bonzo Daniel's role in the family reportedly began to shift. While he survived the horrific attack, the incident and the intense, prolonged police scrutiny that followed changed the internal dynamics of the Daniel clan. Underworld sources cited frequently in the press now suggest that the day-to-day operations of the network, often called D-Mob, are primarily handled by his cousin, Francis Fraggle Green. Bonzo, while still a senior and highly influential figure, is said to have taken a more strategic background role, reportedly happy to no longer be the main man in the direct firing line. The feud, however, has only intensified and, shockingly, expanded. The conflict has become more fragmented, spreading like a virus to Scotland's capital, Edinburgh, and pulling in younger, more reckless, and arguably more dangerous crews. A wave of firebombings and machete attacks has swept through the capital, linked to Daniel ally Mark Richardson and his rival gangs. The war has also gone international. As Scottish law enforcement turned up the heat, key figures from both sides fled to global hubs like Dubai. This glamorous city has become a strange and unlikely nexus for the Glasgow gang war. a place where exile bosses attempt to orchestrate violence back home from the safety of their luxury villas. Sensational reports have even surfaced of a violent summit in Dubai between the factions that devolved into stabbings and car rammings, proving that even on supposedly neutral ground, the hatred runs far too deep for any chance of peace. The violence has even spilled onto the sun-drenched shores of Spain. In May 2025, two key Lyons figures, Ross Monahan and Eddie Lyons Jr., were shot and killed in the resort town of Fuengirola. While a suspect has since been arrested, Spanish police and underworld sources widely believe the hit was directly connected to the feud, with some Daniel allies in Dubai reportedly claiming responsibility for organizing the assassinations. The war has gone global, from Glasgow to Dubai and Spain. Do you think law enforcement can ever truly stop these international crime networks? Or will they always be one step ahead? Let us know what you think. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe so you don't miss what happens next in this unfolding story. The case of Stephen Bonzo Daniel is a chilling and visceral glimpse into a dark world that operates in the shadows, just beneath the surface of our society. It's the story of a man who inherited a dangerous criminal legacy, rose to a position of immense power, and miraculously survived an attempt on his life that was meant to utterly erase him. His survival, with a face painstakingly reconstructed by surgeons, makes him a living embodiment of the brutal, unending cycle of violence that defines the Glasgow gang wars. His scars tell a story that words cannot fully capture. Though key players are now behind bars or living in exile, the feud between the Daniels and the Lyons continues to evolve and fester. It's a multi-generational conflict that has metastasized, spreading from the housing schemes of Glasgow to the luxury high-rises of Dubai and the holiday resorts of Spain, with no clear end in sight. The war for control, for money, and for revenge is far from over. What are your thoughts on this decades-long feud? Do you believe a war like this can ever truly end, or is it destined to be passed down from one generation to the next? Let us know in the comments below. And for more deep dives into the world of true crime, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next story.